All right, good morning, adventurers. It is day 2 of RPG a day. I thought about it a bit, and I decided my second game will be The Whispering Vault, which was my first role playing game. Not the first role playing game I designed, not the first role playing game I played. That'd be D&D. Um, Whispering Vault was released in 1993. Um, I had been in the industry for years at that point and wanted to go on my own, produce a game, and it's an itch that many of us feel, and I got to do it. In fact, I released it at Gen Con. It was a little book like that that was comb bound. It was a black book, a red imprint, and then red comb binding. It was a handsome book because of my industry connections and friends. I had some amazing artists, so the art was beautiful, very striking, and it didn't look like anything else on the market at the time. Very proud of it. So, what Spring Vault was is a horror role playing game, and the hook was I've been thinking about how do you play a horror game, but you're not just. I love things like Call of Cthulhu, love them deeply, but it's always how does some mortal deal with these incredible things that rip at their sanity? So, how can you play it so that instead of being afflicted like that, you're part of the environment? So, I kind of nicknamed it in my head a heroic horror. So, I never say that out loud because it's not the vibe I wanted, but the point was the protagonists had to have a certain amount of agency and investment in the settings so that they're not just, it's not like an abuse cycle, right? So the PCs were called Stalkers, and they were inspired by Cenobites. So they were people that had become aware of kind of the magical world, the world beyond. I think I called it the dream. It was more in the flesh. So the mortal world, they became aware of more of it, and they began to fight supernatural creatures of various kinds. And in doing that, eventually, when they effectively when they died, they were recruited and brought over and became stalkers. The transition from mortal to stalker, they were reshaped. And this is again somewhat Cenobite. The difference was you would be your actual body, your essence would be not just limited by genetics and flesh. It would be an expression of who you were, what you were. So you could be anything. The joke was one of the playtesters made their physical appearance a coil of rope. But you could be anything from kind of a spooky horror person to there was somebody that was a priest from the 1800s, but with really long claw fingers. Monsters of various kinds. You could be literally anything, though. And part of the character generation is you would have 5 keys. And the keys were the things that made you human. So, it could be compassion, could be you picked 5 things that define that. So you did what your appearance was, and you did, so how did you present? And then what are you really? And then you've got various powers, including a domain, like you got a extra planar place to live that you formed and was an further expression of yourself. And minions were powers that expressed through little creatures. So you could manifest things to like disassemble that car or whatever. But those minions then you use them when you were out doing your missions, and your missions were reality was threatened by creatures called the Unbidden. And the Unbidden were effectively mad gods that were trying to recast reality in whatever image they chose. So they were trying to make something else of it. Some of them had smaller ambitions and were kind of monster of the week rampaging awfuls. And there were also lesser creatures that were, I think, called them shadows, that were things that didn't really fit into reality and they weren't supposed to be there. So if you had like, you know, Wendigo, a Wendigo could be a shadow. So it's not really a natural creature, and it's something the stalkers would want to eliminate. It was a rampaging magical creature that was just about hunger and ache. But the Unbidden were the real foes, and they were trying to change the world to be something else, and you'd fight them. It was all about style. It was very evocative. Fans of the game loved the feel of it, the taste of it. The mechanics were. I've always had kind of fetish is a big word, but fondness for peculiar dice rolling strategies. And this one used, I called it dice poker. I mean, not in print. I was talking to my friends. It said dice poker, but it was kind of Yahtzee-ish in that you'd roll a number of six-sided dice based on whatever attribute you were employing. And you would look for, what was the highest single die or total of matching dice. So you'd be looking for, a 5 would be a 5, but 3 threes would be a 9. It was intuitive in that people knew what Yahtzee was, so it was not too hard to explain. But people that really like to figure their probabilities in their head, it drove them nuts. Because it's hard to do that with that. In fact, and I forget which magazine it was. It might have been the Steve Jackson magazine, but Pyramid. Somebody broke down the numbers. Somebody with probably a math degree figured out, what your probabilities were and what the difficulty was and how many dice and played the dice poker. And it was you could figure it out, but it was not the kind of thing you were going to do in your head. You'd have to just take it as read. More dice is better and just go from there. I liked it. It got the job done, and I liked keeping you out of the mentality of breaking down your odds. That was kind of part of my affection for it. Another thing that I really enjoyed was that the difference between attacking close combat and attacking far is it was easier to attack supernatural creatures up close because the farther you get, the more impersonal something becomes. And you're attacking something more with will and force of will, personality focus than you are with actual. Like, it's not the slug of the gun, the bullet that's doing the damage. It's your focus, your intention, potentially your hatred that is damaging the target. I forget if it's just folklore or study, but I seem to remember that there was a lot of to-do made about developments in our culture of things like the difference between the longbow and the crossbow and later the gun, and then obviously missiles, that the more impersonal something became, the more it was like, I'm killing you from over here. Among other things, the easier it was to do it because you don't have that connection. It's harder to think about. If you're stabbing somebody, it's all about I am hurting this person. I'm killing them. If they're a dot, if they're a little point, they're not. It's impersonal, right? So they're not in a way. They're not a person anymore. They're not a tangible victim to you, which means the obverse of that idea was, okay, well, that means it's actually harder to apply your will to them. And then the Whispering Vault, that was a rule. I did the Gen Con release of the funky little book nicknamed the Black Book, I think, finally in the press. With the press, wow. And then followed that up with a full-size proper release, perfect bound, all that stuff. It was a great pickup game, still is. something that you could do character creation, learn to play and do a whole session in a setting, and it was pretty satisfying because of the way the structure was. There were always the seeds there of a more satisfying campaign that wasn't really in the original work. Just the seeds were planted to do it. For example, some mortals knew about the supernatural world. They could do magic, and some were opponents of the Stalkers. Some were allies, kind of like the Watchers and the Hunt. The first couple of supplements and the screen were my work through Pariah Press, which was my first little company. Eventually, and I don't remember exactly why, it might have been around about when I became a dad, I divested, sold the company to Chris Pramus and and some people that were working with him. Wonderful guy, incredibly talented. He's still around. Was Green Ronin, then Ronin Arts, I think. He's been very successful. His work continues to be inspired. Just wonderful stuff. And he loved the setting and took the game and ran with it and did re-released the books because they'd gone out of print at that point. And I think his roster was a total of 11 things eventually, and all very evocative, very, very good. And Ronin expanded out some of those options and made it a better ongoing game, but it made it a better campaign game. And then 2003-ish, it went out of print again. And it eventually, someone bought the rights. I don't remember exactly who. And I know a couple of times people asked me to re-release it myself or do a second edition. And I reached out, and the people that hold the rights were unwilling to do it or to sell me back the rights or give me back the rights. Never sure why. I still don't know to this day. So kind of a disappointment because I would have really liked to do a second edition. Maybe fold in some of those ideas that Ronan did. Recently, Phil Reed of Steve Jackson Games, or acts of Steve Jackson Games, I don't know, honestly. But he is also, I think, Phil Reed Publishing, and he did a game that was kickstarted last year, and it's kind of a vampire hunting game with a very similar vibe. So it's Hunt the Hunters, horror against horror kind of stuff that feels very inspired by the Whispering Vault. And the confirmation of that was, turns out that Phil was one of the people that had the rights. And a PDF of the Whispering Vault was one of his Kickstarter backer awards. So it popped back up as a backer award, and I think it's now available again as a re-release, the original book anyway, on RPG now, Drive-Thru RPG. So it's out again, which is great news. And hopefully it helped in some small way for Phil's new game to see the light, and hope that's going great guns. Very nice to see the old game back. Being such a fan of gaming and growing up with the RPG industry, I mean, I'm of exactly the age that I grew up with a few things that were anchors. One, I share William Shatner's birthday. So I'm a Star Trek baby, and it was, I think, released the year I was born. Also, computers. I'm of the right age that the computer renaissance, the home computer revolution came in my lifetime. So I went from there are no computers except for enormous room-sized mainframes in existence to now, where I've got a lot of my computing takes place on my iPhone, in my pocket, miracles in my pocket, a library in my pocket. It was a great ad. Somebody posted a while back an ad from Radio Shack, and it was like, oh, here are the releases for this year. It might have even been a Christmas ad, And the neat thing is they pointed out that all the devices on the page with little prices, they were all functions of the iPhone. Like everything on that page could be done with your little brick. Um, Amazing. Miracles and wonders. And role playing games. Like I have been around since the very beginning. It is a flex, but it's because of my family. I was young when I started this journey. I was 9, I think. So, but I've been around since the very, very, very beginning. Got involved with D&D, helped a little bit with AD&D, contributing as effectively paid playtesters, and was our family's characters were in either Bonehill or the Assassin's Knot. Um, but so I've been around for this whole wonderful ride, and I got to be a part. That was at Gen Con. Was in the Mecca Center. I had a booth. I had hired an artist to make a cool booty backdrop. All we had was that little book that I had gotten made with what money I had been able to raise, and it was that little half size digest size book, and it was received very well. I think Colt and Anomaly came out around the same time, and a lot of the people that I knew from the industry were very, very supportive and congratulatory. It was an amazing experience. Um, I'm not sure what that experience is like these days, now that Gen Con is a juggernaut. Um, I imagine it's still thrilling and wonderful. Um, Glad I had it. So, Whispering Vault. I mean, I'm not really rating these things, but and I wouldn't rate my own game. Um, it's out there if you want to try it. Um, yeah, grab some friends. Play it at night, have a good time, and hope you have a wonderful time.